feel their pain. The truth is out, the case is closed, but our search for justice never slows.
Hey everyone, now my mic is working. Sorry about that. I had to clean out all of my cache on my computer because it's laggy. So thanks for being here, as I said, on short notice. I had talked about Messiah back when I was discussing the case of Robert Brooks, who was another inmate at Marcy Correctional Facility, which is across the street, literally across the street from Midstate Correctional. I had mentioned Messiah back then because the charges for the officers related to Robert Brooks' death was days before the beating death of Messiah. And this one was not caught on body cam because, in my opinion, correctional officers learned to make sure they weren't on. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with these now 10 more officers being indicted and charged, 2 with murder. Because, last time after the charges in Robert Brooks' death, there was a statewide strike. So we'll see what happens. So I know we probably won't have many people. There's, more exciting things happening on these YouTube streets. I just wish that this was one of them because this is important. This is something that is, I feel, plaguing our country, and more people need to be talking about it, not the drama and BS that, brings in the clicks and views. So, Ninja, I did see you were here earlier. Clip Punk, thanks for being here. Stuff like this, my greatest fear in this life as a mom. And this, Messiah was 22. Robert Brooks was 32. Messiah was 22. He was being held for weapons possession charges, and sadly, he lost his life, and his death was not an easy one. We're going to get into the indictment and press conference that was held yesterday, and then I have a few more videos, and I do have a couple of articles from the New York Times we're going to look at as well. And Team Brit, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Give me 1 second. My phone is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. All right, so we are going to get started. Hey, Burden. How embarrassing and infuriating, but I'm glad the whole nation can finally see the truth about how things are run in this area. Yeah, I agree. Burden is a fellow New Yorker, and sadly, this isn't the first time it's happened. It's just the first time that a set of correctional officers have been caught. Or maybe the witnesses have been believed. And that's actually what we're going to start with. So that was kind of a good segue. This was an article that I had read months ago when covering Robert Brooks. So this was back from March 2nd. So Robert Brooks died on December 9th of 2024. Messiah died on March 1st, 2025. Less than 3 months. 2 prison deaths literally across the street. And actually, let me get a map up just for those of you who may not know the area. Let's see, Midstate Correctional. All right. So I'm going to share this quickly. Let me add this to stage. So this is a general map of the area. Hey, Ninja, thanks for being here. So here's Mid-State, and here's Marcy. So they are literally across the street from one another. Marcy is where Robert Brooks was killed. Mid-State is where Messiah was killed. And we are going to be talking about Messiah's case today. And we will be reminded a little bit of what happened in Robert Brooks' case. If you would like to check out my live streams on that, I do have several. But I will warn you, the details are graphic. They are definitely graphic and disgusting. Very disgusting. All right, so let me... So it says New York State, and this is from the New York Times. New York State police investigate death of another inmate at upstate prison. 11 corrections workers were placed on leave after a 22-year-old inmate at Mid-State Correctional Facility died. Inmates said he was viciously beaten by prison guards. So this is before, this article was written the day after Messiah was killed. So I had said, the New York Times did a disclaimer. It's not known if the witnesses are telling the truth. Well, in this circumstance, they were. So the state police are investigating the death of a prisoner over the weekend in a facility near the Central New York prison where another inmate was fatally beaten by guards in December. Prison officials said on Saturday that an inmate at Mid-State Correctional Facility, a medium security prison in Marcy, New York, near Utica, was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital earlier in the day. Officials released no additional details about the circumstances surrounding his death, but 9 prisoners interviewed by the New York Times on Sunday, 7 of whom agreed to have their names used, said the inmate had been brutally beaten by corrections officers. Their accounts could not be independently confirmed, and Thomas Maley, a prison spokesman, said the death was under investigation. 11 corrections staff members involved in the incident were placed on administrative leave while the investigation proceeds. A spokeswoman for the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, said her office was conducting a preliminary assessment of the death. Deaths that appear to be from other than natural causes are known or a known medical condition are investigated by the Office of the Attorney General, the New York State Police, and the State Corrections Department's Office of Special Investigations. A spokesman for Governor Kathy Hochul did not respond to requests for comment on Sunday, and a spokesman for the Corrections Officers Union said he had no information about the death. Officials did not release the inmate's name. We do know that it is now Messiah Nantwi, 22. Mr. Nantwi had entered custody in May and was serving a 5-year sentence for second-degree criminal possession of a weapon, according to official records. So Messiah had not even been housed for a year before he was brutally killed. His death followed that of another prisoner, 43-year-old, and I misspoke. I thought Robert Brooks was 32. Why did I have 32 in my head? Robert Brooks was 43. So I definitely misspoke. 43-year-old Robert Brooks, who died on December 9th at Marcy Correctional Facility across the street from Mid-State. 10 officers have been criminally charged in Mr. Brooks' death, 6 of them with murder, after they were captured on body-worn cameras beating and choking him in the infirmary. The latest fatality comes amid a mounting crisis in the New York State prison system, where wildcat strikes by thousands of corrections officers are expected to enter a 3rd week. It is also the 5th death in the prison system since the strikes began. That is interesting. Let me just click on this. Let's take a look at this. I didn't realize there have been 5. And this was in March. So they had 5 in 2 months. Hey, TJ, thanks for being here. So this reads, inmate dies at New York prison as corrections officer strike continues. A 61-year-old man was found unresponsive in his cell at Auburn Correctional Facility, one of dozens of state prisons where corrections officers have walked off the job over working conditions. And this was back in February. So this was February 23rd. So it says, the inmate Jonathan Grant, 61, was found on Saturday morning at the Auburn Correctional Facility in Cayuga County, just west of Syracuse, according to the New York State Department of Corrections. Security and medical workers at the prison and a member of the National Guard tried to revive him, but were unsuccessful. The cause of Mr. Grant's death is under investigation. He had been unwell, according to 2 prisoners at Auburn, and another person who reviewed information about Mr. Grant's health. That person said Mr. Grant had had several strokes. At least 5 were documented, including at least 1 in the past few weeks. The 2 prisoners said Mr. Grant had asked for medical help days earlier, but had been brushed off. The Corrections Department did not respond to questions about Mr. Grant's health before his death. Mr. Grant entered custody in 2011 and was serving a sentence of 34 to 40 years for first-degree R and burglary. All right, so I'm not going to read all that because that kind of just goes into, I wanted to see if they said the other deaths, because that's 3. Nope. Okay, so I'm not sure who the other 2 are, but I will definitely look into that. Okay. Okay, it does say at least one of the deaths was a suicide. I didn't get to that part. Corrections officers at nearly all of the state's 42 prisons, including mid-state, have been on strike since February 17th. All right, so I'm going to just skip over that. The death at Mid-State occurred on Saturday morning as members of the National Guard were preparing to conduct a security check in a housing area to make sure all of the prisoners were accounted for, said the 9 prisoners interviewed by the Times, who described the death in unusually graphic detail. So, viewer discretion advised. Inmates, many of whom fear retaliation by prison guards, are often reluctant to speak out about allegations of brutality behind bars. Mr. Nantwi, they said, became upset when the count was set to begin and left for the shower area of the dorm, where he could be heard crying. One prisoner, Rodney Richards, said Mr. Nantwi appeared to be having a disagreement with the National Guard members who were filling in for striking officers and had refused to go to his cubicle. Several prisoners said he had stopped taking his psychiatric medications. In response, the Guard members alerted a group of corrections officers known as the Correctional Emergency Response Team, noting that anywhere from 7 to 15 officers responded, some already wielding their batons. Jordan McLinn, who said his cubicle was near Mr. Nantwi's, said he could hear the blows landing on his body. He was screaming. I kept hearing, "Stop resisting," and at one point you can just hear something being hit. Another prisoner, Aaron Perry, 34, said Mr. Nantwi had begged the prison guards to stop beating him. He said, "I didn't do anything. You're really hurting me. Stop." Some of the prisoners said the responding officers did not appear to be wearing body-worn cameras. Others said a few of the officers had them, but they were turned off. 4 of the prisoners interviewed said they saw a corrections sergeant with either a handheld or body-worn camera, but that he was facing away from the attack. Members of the National Guard who do not wear body cameras stood by looking on. None intervened. The New York National Guard did not respond to a request for comment on Sunday. After the beating, the prisoner said Mr. Nantwi, who had been handcuffed and shackled, was dragged down the hall and down a flight of stairs, his face bloodied and swollen. Mr. Richards said Mr. Nantwi, quote, was not recognizable. One of the prisoners, Michael Hummel Parker, 32, said Mr. Nantwi was making gurgling noises, a sign, he said, that he could not breathe. Jared Crosby, 46, another inmate, said he could see from his cell window either officers or medical workers giving Mr. Nantwi CPR inside an ambulance. Inside the housing area, inmates were ordered to clean up the blood. A bloodied mop and Mr. Nantwi's belongings were removed from the facility. Within hours, investigators were interviewing witnesses. Mr. Richards, 43, said the beating he witnessed had left him uneasy. I fear for my life. I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't fault him for that because, I'm actually surprised that these prisoners gave their names to the New York Times. But I guess, in a way, if something happens to them, you'll know why. You'll know why. So we are going to go to a video, and then we'll get into the press conference. Excuse me, that they had yesterday.
Now to a growing scandal involving the New York State prison system. 10 correction officers now face criminal charges, including murder in the beating death of a young man from Harlem named Messiah Nantwi. It happened at Mid-State Correctional Facility last month, and 10 other officers are accused in a separate deadly assault caught on video at nearby Marcy Prison in December. Investigative reporter Sarah Wallace has been covering these cases. She joins us live with the latest. Sarah?
Well, and Gilma, the description in the indictment as to how Messiah Nantwi died was horrific. What we learned a short time ago from the special prosecutor is that there is some body camera footage, but many of the officers weren't wearing them as required or deliberately disabled them.
So that's interesting. Some of the body cams were on.
This afternoon in the Oneida County Courthouse in Utica, New York, 10 correction officers appeared to face a variety of criminal charges related to the beating death of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi at Mid-State Correctional Facility on March 1st. All were handcuffed and pleaded not guilty.
The grand jury of the County of Oneida, by this indictment, accuses Mr. Levy of the felony crime of murder in the second degree.
2 officers are accused of second-degree murder as the top count, along with other charges. Their bail, $100,000 cash. In all, 5 officers are accused of manslaughter, others with gang assault and making false statements to cover up the crime. The indictment
sounds just like the death of Robert Brooks.
Saying defendants began beating Messiah Nantwi, including multiple strikes to his body and head with their boots.
It was determined by the Onondaga County medical examiner that Mr. Nantwi died from traumatic brain injuries as a result of violent blows to his head, as well as at least 69 other serious blows about his body.
One inmate I spoke with by phone told me what he saw that day.
Multiple times I was open already. Guns blazing. And then they all file in the room, start beating on him, kicking him. And he's just saying, please stop. I didn't do anything. Please stop.
Some of the officers.
So I'm going to assume that that prisoner was the same one that the New York Times had interviewed, because that is the same response that the New York Times was given.
Are accused of falsely claiming Nantwi had a weapon and then mopping up the blood to destroy evidence. What's so disturbing is that Nantwi's death was the second in 3 months in a New York State prison. Body-worn cameras investigators say officers did not know was rolling, shows them viciously beating 43-year-old Robert Brooks at nearby Marcy Correctional Facility in early December. 10 are facing murder and manslaughter charges in Brooks's case. I spoke with his father.
These officers get some kind of twisted, distorted pleasure from beating on other human beings. That is sick. That's savage.
A similar reaction from Nantwi's maternal aunt who helped raise him. I spoke with her this afternoon. Her message, throw the book at all of them. They've been getting away with this for too long. And Governor Hochul just released a statement calling the case tragic, saying that she has directed DOC's Commissioner General Marticello to begin the termination process for all of those involved in Nantwi's death. Gilma.
That loved one not mincing words there. Sarah, is it possible that any of these officers could take pleas?
They have been offered pleas in the Brooks case, and we are just told that 6 other officers in Nantwi's case have agreed to cooperate in return for pleading guilty.
Of course. So 6 of the 10 have agreed to cooperate or take a plea in Nantwi's death
to some of the charges.
Sarah Wallace covering every turn of this case for us. Thank you, Sarah.
Unreal. But I suppose that is our justice system. So next we are going to go to the actual indictment. So this is County Court, County of Oneida. So the people of the state of New York versus, and here we have Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Francis Chandler, Thomas Eck, Craig Klemick, Daniel Berger, David Ferrone, Nicholas Vitale, Michael Iffert, and Donald Slauson. Why does Nicholas Vitale and Michael Iffert sound familiar? Let me just write down those names. I feel like, especially this Michael Iffert. Interesting. They look really familiar. So the grand jury of the County of Oneida by this indictment accuses Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair of the felony crime of murder in the second degree, criminal liability for conduct of another. Okay, so I am going to give another viewer discretion advised because some of the details may be triggering to some. On Saturday, the first day of March of 2025, the administration of the Mid-State Correctional Facility in Marcy, New York, in Oneida County was dealing with a corrections officer strike. To deal with the shortage of correctional officers, the governor of the state of New York mobilized the New York State National Guard to assist New York correctional facilities in guarding the incarcerated individuals and to maintain order. The National Guardsmen received little training to deal with these prisoners or on how to interact with them. On the state, at approximately 10:58 a.m., a request for assistance was broadcast by the National Guard, resulting in the Mid-State CERT, Corrections Emergency Response Team, to respond to Building 21 to deal with an unknown issue with an incarcerated individual. Hey, Be Real, thanks for being here. Defendants were part of that CERT team, and upon arriving at Building 21, they were directed to Room 21A, an incarcerated individual, Messiah Nantwi, by the National Guardsmen. Having no clear understanding of why CERT response was necessary, defendants entered Messiah Nantwi's room after a number of CERT members had already engaged the incarcerated individual. During the subsequent encounter, contrary to DOCCS protocols, defendants began beating Messiah Nantwi, including multiple strikes to his body and head with their boots. Once Messiah Nantwi was no longer responsive, defendants transported Messiah Nantwi out of Building 21, with their objective being to take him to the facility's infirmary. While defendants transported incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi down the stairwell out of Building 21, a further assault occurred, with Messiah Nantwi being assaulted on the stairs by defendants as he was carried out of the building. Messiah Nantwi was subsequently dumped in a holding cell at the infirmary and further struck by the defendant, Caleb Blair. As a result of the numerous beatings by defendants and their fellow correctional officers, incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi died due to massive head trauma and numerous other injuries to his body. Defendants' conduct in beating Messiah Nantwi and kicking him and stomping on his head for no legitimate law enforcement purpose, and for further assaulting him and injuring him on the stairs exiting his building, and for leaving him unattended in a holding cell for several minutes. Oh, and this is where I got to flip it. While displaying no urgency for medical personnel to check on him, demonstrated depraved indifference to the life of incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi and resulted in his death. Second count. In the Aforesaid grand jury by this indictment further accuses Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Craig Klemick, and Daniel Berger of the violent felony crime of manslaughter in the first degree. That or on about the first day of March 2025 in the town of Marcy, the defendants, with intent to cause serious physical injury to another person, caused the death of such person. Said defendants, acting in concert with each other, intending to cause serious physical injury to incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi, and caused his death by beating him to death with their fists, batons, and boots. And you know, Mr. Brooks, Robert Brooks's dad had a point. They get some type of twisted self-gratification out of doing these things. Like, who thinks of stomping on someone? Not me. It's awful. Third count. And the aforesaid grand jury in this indictment further accuses Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Craig Klemick, and Daniel Berger of the violent felony crime of gang assault in the first degree. That or on about the first day of March 2025, the defendants and others known to the grand jury intending to cause serious physical injury to another person and aided by two or more other persons actually present cause serious physical injury to such person. Defendants were a part of a CERT team at the Mid-State Correctional Facility responding to Building 21 for a call to assist National Guardsmen for an unknown reason. Give me 1 second. Making little or no effort to ascertain the reason for the call, the defendants and others known to the grand jury, while acting in concert with each other, were directed to the room of Messiah. Upon entering the room, Messiah had his hands raised and displayed no weapon. Protesting being handcuffed and restrained for no reason apparent to him, Messiah Nantwi grabbed the vest of Corrections Officer Joshua Bartlett and was almost immediately physically assaulted by the defendants. The assault consisted of multiple blows to Messiah's body, defendants using fists, batons, and boots. The beatings intensified after Messiah bit the hand of Corrections Officer Caleb Blair through his glove and later bit the hand of Corrections Officer Thomas Eck. The assault on Messiah caused serious physical injury and ultimately death from the injuries inflicted. Well, I would have bit them too. I mean, unreal. Fourth count. So Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Francis Chandler, Thomas Eck, Craig Klemick, and Daniel Berger of the violent felony crime of gang assault in the second degree. I just want to see if anything's different. So this is the same as the previous. It's just less detail. Fifth count, David Ferrone and Francis Chandler of the felony crime of manslaughter in the second degree. Let's see. So it says both defendants had a supervisory role over the responding CERT members. During the response by the CERT team, both these defendants witnessed a vicious assault on Messiah Nantwi, completely disproportionate to the supposed threat he posed, including multiple blows to his body by fists, batons, and boots. During this approximately 5-minute assault, neither of the sergeant defendants made any effort to restrain the CERT team or ameliorate. I have never seen that word before. Ameliorate. I need to look that up. Give me one moment. Oh, to make better. Ameliorate. Okay. So that is to make better, make something bad or unsatisfactory better. I've never seen that word. Okay, so to ameliorate the assault perpetrated on Messiah Nantwi, directly contrary to DOCCS protocols relating to use of force and duty to intervene. As a result of the defendant's lack of intervention, Messiah Nantwi eventually succumbed to his injuries and died. So here we have another case of sergeants being involved in doing nothing. The difference is in Robert Brooks's case, one of the sergeants actually was an active participant. Sixth count: David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vitale, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemick. Conspiracy in the 5th degree. Was that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no, just 8. So 8 of 10 charged with conspiracy. Says, after an incident at a New York correctional facility where force is used against an incarcerated individual, corrections officers are required to fill out Form 2104A, listing all staff involved in the use of force, listing all staff present, and outlining what force the officer employed and what force by others he or she witnessed. These forms became part of the permanent case file regarding the use of force and may be used in subsequent criminal or civil litigation. Defendants conspired to file false 2104A reports, thereby committing the felony of offering a false instrument for filing in the 1st degree. So we have, just like Robert Brooks, they were falsifying documents. So here it says, pursuant to penal law, the following overt acts are alleged in furtherance of the conspiracy. Overt act number 1. Almost immediately after incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi was transported by ambulance to Wynn Hospital, defendants Francis Chandler and David Ferrone ordered those involved to assemble in Building 3. While assembled there, and in earshot of all the defendants, Corrections Officer Jonah Levy pleaded for those assembled to omit him from their 2104A reports. Okay, so let me just go back, because I believe Jonah is the one being charged with murder. Yes, so Jonah and Caleb are the ones being charged with murder. Unbelievable. Okay, so where were we? Here we are. So Jonah Levy pleaded for those assembled to omit him from the report. A similar request was made by Sergeant Francis Chandler, and both requests were sanctioned by Sergeant David Ferrone. Hey, Scottish, how are you? Thanks for being here. Overt act number 2. So it says, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vitale, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemick all filled out false 2104A forms that omitted any mention of Sergeant Francis Chandler or Corrections Officer Jonah Levy, even though all the listed defendants knew full well that Francis Chandler and Jonah Levy were present in the room and were actively involved in the use of force. Overt act number 3. On March 2nd, 2025, at the direction of Sergeant Francis Chandler, all defendants and others known to the grand jury assembled at Raspberries, a local diner, for breakfast in order to develop and coordinate the false narrative that nothing improper was done to Messiah Nantwi and that Francis Chandler and Jonah Levy had not used any force against Messiah Nantwi. So they went, I mean, talk about conspiracy. Complete cover-up that clearly, thankfully, was not covered up. So 7th count, again, we have offering a false instrument for filing. So that kind of just goes, that's kind of the same thing that we just read. 8th count, conspiracy in the 5th degree. So I'm going to read this one because this is a little bit different. So in an effort to somehow justify the unlawful beating and killing of incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi, defendants orchestrated an effort to falsely suggest that Messiah Nantwi was armed with a weapon by falsely claiming that a weapon was recovered from the floor of his room, said conduct being in violation of penal law, tampering with physical evidence. And I believe it was a knife, based on what I've read. I believe they staged a knife in his room. I know, Team Brit, it is wild that it keeps happening, and it's probably happened. I mean, it has happened more than we know. So here, okay, so this is the tampering with physical evidence. So overt act number 1. After the assault on Messiah Nantwi, and after it became obvious that he was in dire condition, Defendant Sergeant Francis Chandler ordered a corrections officer known to the grand jury to retrieve a weapon that had been oh my God, this is unreal. So the sergeant ordered a corrections officer to retrieve a weapon that had been confiscated earlier that day in an incident totally unrelated to the assault of Messiah. Following orders, the crude weapon was retrieved by the corrections officer and placed in the custody of Defendant Francis Chandler. Overt act number 2. In furtherance of the conspiracy, Defendant David Ferrone was caught discussing the weapon on a body-worn camera placed in the infirmary's restroom. Wow. So I'm assuming that he took his body-worn camera off and put it in the restroom, not thinking it was going to overhear what he was saying. Oh, there we go. Upon sighting the camera, Defendant David Ferrone uttered an expletive and informed a co-conspirator known to the grand jury of same. Okay, so that answered my question. He didn't realize it was recording. And then when he realized it, he uttered an expletive. Overt act number 3. While still at Building 3 and continuing with the conspiracy to essentially plant evidence posthumously on Messiah Nantwi, Defendant Francis Chandler asked in a loud voice as to which corrections officer would, quote, volunteer to falsely claim that he or she discovered the weapon. Defendant Thomas Eck, quote, volunteered for that role and subsequently claimed he had found the weapon. 9th count, tampering with physical evidence. Oh, and it was a knife. So it says, said defendants intending that a weapon they knew had not been found in Messiah Nantwi's room, and with intent that said weapon be used or introduced at an official proceeding, defendants prepared false physical evidence to wit. As outlined in count 8, defendants falsely claimed a makeshift knife had been found in Messiah Nantwi's room in the hope that this would somehow lead to an official finding, either by DOCCS or a law enforcement agency, that the use of force against Messiah was justified. That may be, but I know some of the details, but when we hear the full details of Messiah's death, the force used was not necessary. It was not necessary, especially when you have 10 corrections officers and 1 inmate. Hey, Lindsay, how are you? I hope the baby's doing well. 10th count, Donald Slauson, tampering with physical evidence. So it says, the said defendant, believing that certain physical evidence was about to be produced or used in an official proceeding or a prospective official proceeding, and intending to prevent such production or use, he suppressed it by any act of concealment or destruction. After Messiah Nantwi had been removed by ambulance from the Mid-State Infirmary, and knowing full well that incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi had been physically abused and was kept in the facility's holding cell, defendant set about to mop up all the blood in the room, thus preventing law enforcement from conducting a detailed analysis of possible blood or blood spatter evidence, which would have aided in determining what happened to Messiah. So that one prisoner, let me go back to, because what did he say about the mop? I don't know if it was in this one or maybe it was a different one that we had read I don't, maybe it wasn't. Oh, here. Yes. So it says, inside the housing area, inmates were ordered to clean up the blood. A bloodied mop and Mr. Nantwi's belongings were removed from the facility. So according to inmates, they were ordered to clean it up. In this, it's saying that, I mean, the defendant set up to mop, so it doesn't mean he did mop, but he initiated it. 11th count, offering a false instrument for filing in the first degree. And this is the last one, so let's see. Defendant offered said written instrument to a public office or public servant with the knowledge of belief it would be filed with, registered, or recorded in, or otherwise become a part of the records. Defendant Michael Iffert filed a written memorandum memorializing his observation of said incident, knowing that said memo would become part of the official case file and used for informational purposes. Defendant falsely claimed in said memo that he witnessed no use of force and further claimed that he had no clear view into Messiah Nantwi's room, even though he was standing directly outside. There we go. When the assault started. And he further remained in the hallway outside of the room for the duration of the assault. So he stood by and did nothing. And he lied on an official document. Unbelievable. All right. So we are going to go to the press conference. Let me just get over here. Of course, it's not working. All right, here we go. All right, so let me just fast forward here. All right, and I will mute during this. Make it bigger? I guess I can't make it bigger. Oh, yes, I can. Here it is. All right, there we go. Oh, I thought it was starting.
Been appointed special.
All right, here we go. Or not. I really tried to get this on a YouTube video, but the one I found, the volume was awful.
All right, good afternoon. Everybody all set?
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I am the Onondaga County elected DA, and I have been appointed special prosecutor by the Attorney General Letitia James to investigate the death of Messiah Nantwi, which, as you know, occurred on March 1st of this year. Today, an Oneida County grand jury reported out a single indictment charging 10 current and former corrections officers with various crimes relating to the death of Mr. Nantwi. 6 other corrections officers who have not appeared in court yet have agreed to cooperate with the special prosecutor, and I have made deals with them. 2 of them will be pleading to felonies, and 4 of them will be pleading to various misdemeanors. All defendants, even those that I've made deals with, are entitled to the presumption of innocence. An indictment is only an indictment. It's a set of allegations, and there's a lot of work yet to be done in this particular case. I'd like to summarize for you what is in the public record regarding the indictment as to the events of Saturday, March 1st of this year. As you all know, and as Commissioner Marticello is acutely aware, At that time, there was a corrections officers strike going on. There's also an influx of National Guardsmen that were present at Midstate and several other correctional facilities throughout the state of New York. At approximately 10:55 a.m. that morning, the people are able to show that all was well in Building 21 where Mr. Nantwi resided. I know that because the corrections officer who was assigned to do rounds on that occasion walked past his room at approximately 10:55 a.m. and there was nothing going on. At about 10:58 a.m., a call went out over the radio at the facility calling for backup. The evidence will show that when the CERT team responded and got there at approximately 11 a.m., there was virtually no or minimal effort to determine what was the need for the backup, what the nature of the call was. No weapons were observed and no assaultive behavior was observed by the CERT team members as they entered Building 21. A non-CERT team member, a corrections officer, recorded the last video of Mr. Nantwi before the alleged assault, and he was no longer able to communicate. That corrections officer exited the room and various CERT team members entered. None of them, to our knowledge at this point, were wearing mandated body-worn cameras. Approximately 4.5 minutes later, Mr. Nantwi is removed from his room and taken down 3 sets of stairs where it is alleged by the grand jury that an additional assault occurred in the stairwell. Handcuffed and taken to the infirmary and laid on the floor in a holding cell, an additional assault is alleged to have occurred by the grand jury. Fragments of Mr. Nantwi's entrance into the infirmary are captured on one corrections officer's body-worn camera. It is not a continuing flow, but there are enough indications to name and identify the individuals involved and some of the things that occurred. Many other corrections officers, apparently intentionally, either turned off their cameras, placed them in an area of concealment, or simply looked the other way. Kunkel ambulance personnel responded to the infirmary following a call at 11:36 a.m. At approximately 11:47 a.m., and at that point detected no signs of life in Mr. Nantwi. It was determined by the Onondaga County Medical Examiner that Mr. Nantwi died from traumatic brain injuries as a result of violent blows to his head, as well as at least 69 other serious blows about his body. No COs required any medical intervention. I was appointed special prosecutor shortly after the incident and assisted by my own investigative team, officials from the Department of Corrections and Community Service, and the New York State Police. We began an investigation and wanted to assist the grand jury in answering the following questions. Who, if anyone, was justified in using physical force against Mr. Nantwi? 2, if initial force was justified, did it remain appropriate and proportionate to the danger presented, if any, throughout the encounter? And did it follow DOC's protocols? And 3rd, were efforts made to thwart my investigation by deception, concealment, or destruction? The grand jury has answered those questions as follows. The first count charges 2 individuals, corrections officers Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair, with depraved mind murder, not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved and so wanton and disregarding of human life that New York law allows it to rise to the level of intentional murder. They are charged based on their actions, not only in Mr. Nantwi's room, but also in the stairwell and in the infirmary. Secondly, the grand jury has returned charges of manslaughter in the 1st degree, intent to cause serious physical injury resulting in death. Those corrections officers are again Levi and Blair, and additionally Thomas Eck, Craig Klemek, and Daniel Berger. They are also charged with gang assault in the 1st degree, intent to cause serious physical injury, and doing so, a Class B violent felony. Same individuals, Levy, Blair, Eck, Klemek, and Berger. gang assault in the second degree, intent to cause simply physical injury and resulting in serious physical injury. And this time, the same individuals, in addition to Sergeant Francis Chandler. Manslaughter in the second degree has been charged against Sergeants David Ferrone and Francis Chandler. The theory of prosecution on that count is that these two sergeants in a supervisory role in Mr. Nantwi's room did absolutely nothing to stop the beating that he was enduring and offered absolutely no assistance to him, completely contrary to DOC's protocols and guidelines. Then the grand jury began to focus on the cover-up, as amateurish and ineffective as it was. In the sixth count, David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vital, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemek are charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to offer a false instrument for filing. DOCS has a form known as 2104A, which requires the individual corrections officer who was present to indicate who was present at the scene, what force was used by the author of the report, and what force was witnessed by the author of the report. In addition to charging conspiracy, the grand jury must also allege overt acts. In this case, the overt acts alleged are, number one, that every single use of force reported by these individuals omitted two people, Sergeant Chandler and Corrections Officer Levi, and that was done intentionally. The second overt act, it is alleged that the reports were in fact filed and known to be false when they were filed. And the third overt act alleged is that on the following morning, at a diner called Raspberries in Oneida County, all of the co-conspirators met and agreed to continue with the story that everything they did was completely proper. David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, and Thomas Eck are also charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. These three individuals, along with others known to the grand jury, allegedly concocted a scheme to posthumously plant a weapon in Mr. Nantwi's room. The overt acts alleged in favor of that conspiracy, alleged overt act number one is that the weapon itself was found earlier that day in a completely unrelated incident. The second overt act, a body-worn camera intentionally hung in a men's room at the infirmary of Midstate, caught two of the co-conspirators discussing the conspiracy to plant the weapon, again, posthumously on Mr. Nantwi. And the third overt act alleged is that defendant Chandler, actually in front of a group of all of the corrections officers, asked for a volunteer to have someone come forward and say that it was he that discovered the weapon. And it is alleged that that quote unquote volunteer was Thomas Eck. Mr. Slauson, Corrections Officer Donald Slauson, is charged with tampering with physical evidence, and it is alleged that he had cleaned up the holding cell of all of Mr. Nantwi's blood over at the infirmary. And the final defendant is Sergeant allegedly falsely asserting that he had no opportunity to look into the room and in fact saw no use of physical force against Mr. Nantwi. I want to thank the staff, my office. Probably 10% of my office has been involved in corrections officers allegedly committing homicides over the last 2 months. And I'm joined here with Senior Assistant DA Sarah Fitzpatrick and Senior Assistant DA Alphonse Williams, who have done an incredible job in helping me present this evidence to a grand jury. I also am joined here today by Ruben Lindo and the Reverend Kevin McCall, who are both individuals who have supported me throughout my endeavors in an effort to get justice, not only for Mr. Brooks, but for Mr. Nantwi as well. I don't believe that anybody from Mr. Nantwi's family is here. The only individual from his family that I've spoken to is through his attorney, his dad, and I understand that his dad is not in the greatest of physical shape and apparently was unable to travel here today. I also want to thank Troopers Tim Doherty, Bill Casey, Tom Quilter, Denny Doherty, Andy Wilmot, and if I may reserve a special spot for Olivia Tabor, who have been just incredible in helping me present this case. In addition to the work done by my office, as I mentioned, DOCS has been unbelievably supportive. Every single thing I have asked of them, they have gotten for me. I mentioned Chris Marticello last time I was here. I now want to turn the microphone over to the Commissioner of DOCS, Daniel Marticello, for his comments. Dan?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to first start with offering my sincerest condolences to the Nantwi family. The murder of Messiah is really a senseless act that no family should have to ever experience or endure. In response to this incident, I immediately deployed my Office of Special Investigations, as well as made immediate referrals to the New York State Police and the Attorney General's office, who quickly identified District Attorney Fitzpatrick's office to take over as a special prosecutor to make sure that we're keeping people accountable for any wrongdoing that may have occurred. After what occurred at Marcy back in December, I vowed that I would not allow violence to become normalized within the system. And I'm committed to this goal, and that has been unwavering. Both my executive leadership team and I are continuing to work with the internal and external stakeholders to ensure that we assess our culture and determine areas that we can improve. The people entrusted to our care deserve better than this, and I'm committed to impactful change to an end the violence within the system, both for incarcerated and staff alike. The bottom line is we must do better to change our culture and the way we approach this work. I strongly condemn the behavior of those staff members involved in the murder of Mr. Nantwi, as well as making sure that we hold them accountable to the highest standards of public safety. And today, this is one step forward in making sure that we bring justice to him and his family. I'm committed as we move forward to structural and cultural change that ensures the basic dignity and rights and respect of all people, whether they're incarcerated or working in the system. There's no place for violence in the correctional system, regardless of who perpetrates the crime or the violence inside of our institutions. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Superintendent of State Police, his staff, the District Attorney, and members of his staff for their commitment to ongoing public safety and for starting to bring justice in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm not sure what number superintendent I'm on in my 40-year career as a prosecutor. I think it's up there, but I don't know of that I could point to one that I've had a better working relationship with than the current one. And I also want to again publicly thank him for the assistance that I've gotten from the New York State Police. And as a former president of the National DA's Association, who has traveled all over this country, I can tell you that I don't know of a state police agency that is more accomplished and more qualified than this one. And a lot of it has to do with Superintendent Stephen James, who'd like to say a few words. Soup.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm being called. So, excuse me. The boss at home. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dave Fitzpatrick. Today, the New York State Police, certainly in coordination with the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office, under the authority of the grand jury, there's been criminal action taken in connection with the death of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi, as part and parcel of why we're here to discuss. As of this afternoon, New York State correctional officers have been indicted and they have surrendered themselves to the state police for processing. Now, these arrests, without a doubt, they follow an intensive investigation by members of the state police, of which I'm thoroughly proud of the work that they've done. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation, a forensic identification unit, and other specialized teams. Their work, without a doubt, was instrumental in bringing this case together. Since this incident has occurred back on March 1st at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, our investigators, they've worked tirelessly. They've uncovered facts to determine the truth with regard to what happened inside the walls of the correctional facility. While certainly I'm limited in what I can convey regarding the specifics as far as the details of the case, because the matters are before the court, and certainly as the special prosecutor knows, but I want to make one thing absolutely clear. No one should operate or is expected to be above the law. That's whether you're a citizen, that's whether you're a police officer, or whether you're a corrections officer. That is of particular note. The evidence presented to the grand jury, it suggests that there was a gross abuse of authority that took place. And I lay it out as an abuse that has led to the loss of a man's life. Obviously, that's not acceptable, and it obviously wasn't tolerated. Our role in law enforcement is not just to enforce the laws, but to protect the public in general. That means investigating criminal acts wherever they occur and wherever they may happen, whether in the city streets or behind the walls of correctional facilities. I want to thank District Attorney Fitzpatrick, certainly for your continued leadership and your commitment as a special prosecutor in this case, as well as the separate but equally serious case involving Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility. And I'd like to say to the people of the state of New York, law enforcement specifically, I speak for the state police, we're here to serve you. We are here to answer to you, and we're here to support you. Because we know trust, it exists only if there is a mutual understanding and if we uphold aspects of the law and are impartial. And that's what we intend to uphold. Thank you for your time.
Glad to take any questions that I'm allowed to answer, or anybody else standing up here. Sir.
Could I ask a question for Commissioner? It has to do with body cam policy. We were here in February, and Mr. Miller was talking about how the new rules on body cameras, fixed position cameras, would be very effective. And yet, sadly, within a month, we had this. Is this a factor of COs not following the procedure? Does the procedure have to be revisited? How could this happen with the inaction of the new body cam policy?
Yeah, so after the incident with Mr. Brooks in December, I enacted a statewide policy that a facility that had facility-wide body cameras that they'll be on at all times while individuals are on duty. Some facilities are not fully operational at this time where only supervisors have them, but at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, they are fully deployed. So clearly staff were acting outside of the policy, which you heard the DA speak about the violating both DOC's policies as well as their oath of office. So we continue when we find those instances to discipline staff under the collective bargaining agreement to make sure we drive that message home. The policy is not, please do it. It's our policy. This is what you must do or be subject to discipline. And in this case, obviously it led to criminal behavior, which was uncovered by the district attorney.
Incarcerated individual cameras must be on for all COs.
Yeah, so correct. The body camera must be powered on at all times. And then when they're interacting with an incarcerated person, it must be activated to capture that event.
Commissioner, you said that you made that vow to end violence in the prison system after Robert Brooks. Of course, Mr. Nantwi is allegedly murdered after Robert Brooks. What changes will now be made to make sure we are standing here again?
Yeah, so when we began down the road of really doing a cultural assessment after the Robert Brooks case, we hired external law firms to conduct a full review of the system, which is currently underway. They're looking at our policies, our procedures, our training, how we're training correction officers in the academy, as well as in service, and then also looking at the culture of our facilities to make recommendations to my office. That review continues, and as a result of this more recent incident, we've expanded that scope to include a review of Mid-State Correctional Facility as well. And again, we will be making a public report once that is available, and I'm committed to making the changes that are necessary. I've long said that people come to prison as punishment, not for punishment, and our job while they're with us is to give them the services and the access to academics and programming to allow them to be better versions of themselves and to go home to their community and their families, which clearly we failed in this opportunity.
Commissioner, how can 30 officers with 2 prisons so close have such similar intent?
Well, again, the criminal process will play out, and our independent review, whatever it reveals, we will make sure we uncover every stone and make any changes that are necessary to make sure that we are driving home that this is not the type of behavior that we expect from people that are sworn members or civilian members that work for the department. It's just uncalled for, and I won't tolerate it.
How much role did the strikes play in this, given that it seems like in the indictments this started with the National Guardsmen incorrectly broadcasting something over the radio?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we were in the midst of a strike, unprecedented. There hadn't been a strike in 46 years in the corrections department. So, I mean, obviously that it had a tremendous impact. The direct correlation to what it played in this particular incident, I'm not going to opine as we continue forward with the criminal charges.
Question.
Well, after I watched the videos in the Robert Brooks case, as well as this incident that we're talking about here today that led to the murder of a second individual, from my perspective, I need to question everything going on, right? Which is why we brought in somebody independent to conduct a review, because I want to make sure that if we do have any patterns or cultures, that we get to the heart of the issue and make those necessary changes, because that's not who we are as a department. It's certainly not who we are as a state. And moving forward, we need to make sure that we make the necessary changes that this doesn't happen again.
Commissioner JB Nicholas, question. Has any of the guards allegedly killed Robert Brooks? Have they been fired by the department?
There have been a number of them that have resigned. We do have arbitration hearings that are scheduled in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements, but they've all been suspended and we are seeking their termination, similar to in this case as well.
And you talked about changing culture before, but I spoke with several correction officers who've been through, they've all been through the department's academy. And they say that in the academy, they're actually trained to hate inmates. Is that true? And what's your response?
No, I don't find that to be the case. I've reviewed the curriculum, and actually, as of recently, I've had a formerly incarcerated person address the academy class to show what success looks like and the impact that they have on people's lives. Oftentimes it's forgotten the work of corrections and the important impact it has on the continuum of public safety. But if we do our job right and they go back to society, we avoid future victimization, future crimes, and they become tax-paying citizens, giving back to their communities and playing important roles.
I understand what you're saying about sometimes that corrections officers can actually sort of like beach a guy, so to speak, in some situations. I've heard corrections officers express that. I've heard prisoners express that, that it happens once in a while. Guards seem to think that cameras will impede that ability to sort of beach people. You know what I mean? Because they'll always be on camera. And guards are afraid that they'll be disciplined for maybe speaking the wrong way or things like that. Is there any consideration of that? Like, what's your response?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I think that correction officers play an important role in the rehabilitative process, particularly this day and age, partnering with program staff and our teachers and what have you. In terms of the body cameras, I see no evidence of that. And I've heard those anecdotal claims, well, we're going to be disciplined because we speak ill of the commissioner or we speak ill of the superintendent. I haven't disciplined any person that is letting off steam talking about their supervisory staff or anything of that nature. If they're engaging in misconduct, then absolutely we'll discipline them and hold them accountable. But for those ancillary conversations that happen to be caught on body camera, we haven't been able to point to one instance where that's occurred.
Is the strike to blame for the death?
Again, I don't know that there's a direct correlation, but certainly we were under tremendous stress dealing with the strike with almost 10,000 correction officers and sergeants that had walked out to participate in an illegal job action. Yeah, so again, we have we've conducted investigations when there's allegations, and when we find wrongdoing, we do go through the disciplinary process through the collective bargaining agreement. In terms of specifics on each individual, I can't recite them here today, and to the extent that may be information for the jury to consider in the judicial process, I'm not going to comment any further.
How many of the defendants were on the search?
I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many the total number is.
DA Fitzpatrick, you detailed
almost like a bad Hollywood attempt at a cover, meeting at a diner, the planting of a knife. I just wonder what you make of that and what that says about the attempt.
Well, what I initially make of it, Andrew, is it's criminal conduct. I hope to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury several months from now. But what I will say, and again, this is an impression that I have, is that, you know, some of the people that we interviewed who are cooperators admitted to this two conspiracies: one, the planting of the shank, and two, the falsifying the reports. And when I, being a prosecutor, I want to prove things with facts and statements and eyewitnesses, and they kind of looked at me and said, well, it was kind of understood that we do it that way. I mean, that's not good enough for a jury, and I'll present more proof than that. But that to me is problematic. Before the next question, I just want to acknowledge my colleague from Oneida County, the Oneida County District Attorney Todd Carville, who's in the room. Todd has been very much of an assist to me in my coming to Oneida County, and he's also working on things that I won't comment on outside of my jurisdiction that I think will be helpful to me.
DA, with the Robert Brooks case, everyone was able to see the nauseating video that was released by the Attorney General. In this case, not a lot of camera footage. So what is the primary evidence that you have of the meetings in 3 different locations? And can you speak to the brutality of the fact that this began, as you described it, seemingly unprovoked and continued for a long time?
Well, to answer the latter question first, the indictment speaks for itself in terms of the severity of what the grand jury thought of it by charging 2 individuals with murder. And again, not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved that it rises to the level of intentional murder. And in terms of the proof that I have, I'll limit myself to what's in the indictment. The indictment alleges that the victim here, Mr. Nantwi, was beaten with fists, with batons, and with boots. And medical examiner testified about massive head injuries. I think one way of analogizing it is, Mike Tyson went through an entire career as a boxer, and no one ever killed him, and he never killed anyone. And his job was to hit people in the head and inflict injury upon them. So that should give you some idea of the severity of these alleged injuries.
Do you know how, and did you offer a theory, and apologies if I missed this, as to how it went that morning from basically everything's fine at 10:55 to deadly chaos within like 3 minutes? Like, what brought the men accused of beating him to death into contact with you in the first place?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to kind of clarify that because I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that I'm blaming the National Guardsmen. Nothing could be farther from the truth. What the grand jury is suggesting is that this is something that spiraled out of control unnecessarily. The alleged contact that began between the National Guard and Mr. Nantwi had to do with Mr. Nantwi interjecting himself in another incarcerated individual's effort to obtain medication. The National Guardsmen did not appreciate that. They indicated that to him. And then further testimony has indicated that Mr. Nantwi oftentimes had problem with what's known as count. Count being a systemic operation where corrections officers want the incarcerated individuals in their room. And as the name suggests, they would then do a physical head count of the people. Mr. Nantwi was initially a little resistant to that. After the call went out and before the CERT team got there, that situation had resolved itself by the intervention of Mr. Nantwi's roommate, another incarcerated individual. Obviously, it could not have taken him a long period of time. If the call went out at 10:58 and Mr. Nantwi was in his room compliant at 11 o'clock. But again, those are things that the trial jury will hear in this case. Somebody had.
Blaming the
Yeah,
National Guard.
one second.
Of the 2 conspiracies, you mentioned that they planned them. Did they actually try to carry through planting the night and submitting the reports, or they just?
They went so far as to file reports about that, as alleged in the indictment. In terms of physically presenting at a proceeding, That's not a necessary element of the crime. It only has to be a prospective proceeding. They never got that far for obvious reasons. Question.
So you say you're not blaming National Guard members.
Right.
But they make a call without explaining why they're making the call.
Right.
And the situation resolved. No National Guard members said, hey, everything's fine. Size in the cell, everything's okay.
There's video of the CERT team coming onto Mr. Nantwi's floor and having probably a 3-second interaction with 3 National Guardsmen. And it's difficult to hear exactly what is said, but it's basically
All right, my computer, as you can see, is going wacky. So, unless that was the end, maybe that was the end. Let me get rid of that. My computer just started fritzing out. Crap. Let me get back here. Let me share this again. So I agree. I think it was, who said it? Scottish, maybe? Somebody had said, I just saw it. Somebody had said it's, oh, here, Ninja had said, shame we can't hear the questions. I agree. With these press conferences, I wish they would just like pass a mic around with the press and let them, you know what I mean? Like that way you can hear what they're answering, because we're just hearing the answer. One thing I did, I was curious about bond or bail, because we know in Robert Brooks's case, the bond was not very high. So I did look it up, and where the heck did it go? The judge had set bail at $100,000 cash and a $250 bond. The DA had actually requested $500,000 cash and $1 million bond. So the DA definitely didn't win that argument. So I have another video we're going to take a look at, and then I have one last article, and then we will call it a day, because I have to get outside and get lawn work done. My goal is to clean off my side porch completely, and I need to tend to my rose bushes because they are very unruly. And before the grass starts growing, I got to get out there and get them done. All right.
CBS 6's Brianna Cipardi was inside the Utica courtroom today as the indictments were unsealed, and she joins us live right now. So, Bree, there are also claims here today of a cover-up in all this.
There is, Greg, and we'll hear from the special prosecutor more about that. But this is a shocking indictment because the beating death of Messiah Nantwi happened less than 2 weeks after 6 officers were charged with murder in the beating death of Robert Brooks. Brooks was incarcerated in Marcy, Messiah Nantwi incarcerated in Midstate, and the 2 correctional facilities located right across the street from each other. Now, a total of 10 officers were charged today. 2 of them, Jonah Levi and Caleb Blair, charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter, among other charges.
I'm just going to pause it there because this Levi, he's the one who, his name was in a lot of those charges. I mean, unreal.
5 more face manslaughter and gang assault charges. 3 others are accused of helping cover it up, allegedly false.
This one, let me just go back for a minute because, where is it? The one on the right actually looks scared. He actually, his facial expressions, he looks afraid. This one on the left just looks pissed off. But this one definitely looks scared to me.
and manslaughter, among other charges. 5 more face manslaughter and gang assault charges. 3 others are accused of helping cover it up, allegedly falsifying documents and interfering with evidence. According to the Onondaga County DA, William Fitzpatrick, he's a special prosecutor here. He says Nantwi died of traumatic brain injuries and blunt force trauma to other parts of his body. He was just 22 years old. Now, the next morning after his death, Fitzpatrick said that these 10 defendants met up plotting to falsify the truth.
And the third overt act alleged is that on the following morning at a diner called Raspberries in Oneida County, all of the co-conspirators met and agreed to continue with the story that everything they did was completely proper.
Unreal.
Fitzpatrick also described how some of the defendants plotted to plant a weapon inside Nantwi's cell after his death. While Brooks' beating death was caught on camera, this wasn't the case here. Fitzpatrick said the officers involved deliberately disabled their cameras or turned the other way. Mr. Nantwi's family was unable to attend this hearing, but a spokesperson for the family did attend.
Well, I didn't think I was going to be here again regarding another incident that actually took place in the midst of fighting for justice for Robert Brooks. I think that brutality, it's a normal thing that happens in prison, that a lot of incarcerated individuals put in complaints over and over with, and it goes unheard of. So now they hear it in an open court that these officers do this repeatedly.
Do you think that there is a systemic and deeper problem with the abuse and accountability inside your prisons?
Well, after I watched the videos in the Robert Brooks case, as well as this incident that we're talking about here today that led to the murder of a second individual, from my perspective, I need to question everything going on.
No shit, Sherlock.
The commissioner for the State Department of Corrections said his department has hired an external law firm to conduct a review of the system, looking at policies, procedures, and training. Now, the DA, Fitzpatrick, he's also the prosecutor for the case surrounding Robert Brooks. He was asked if he thinks there's a problem here with the state's correctional system. He said the similarities in these 2 cases are hard to ignore. Now, all the defendants are due back in court next month. Reporting live in Utica, Brianna Supardi, CBS 6 News.
Unreal. And Marticello, who is the commissioner, he's relatively new. I think this is only his 2nd year. But either way, I mean, clearly there's no honest oversight in these correctional facilities. And I have a feeling we're going to hear about this more and more, unfortunately. So the last thing that I have is another article from the New York Times, just to kind of sum up everything that we've heard. And it also gives some additional details on what the medical examiner's report stated. And some of them are hard to hear. So two guards charged with murder and beating death a prisoner in New York. All right, let's see. 2 corrections officers were charged with second-degree murder and 8 others with related offenses in the killing of a man who inmates said was savagely beaten to death by guards last month at a prison in central New York. And a lot of people have asked, why isn't it first degree? First degree in New York State is related to peace officers. I'm trying to think of the other ones. Let me actually look it up real quick. First degree. All right, so I'm just going to read this. In New York, murder in the first degree is the most serious form of homicide. It requires the intent to cause the death of another person, which can be demonstrated through various factors. The law outlines specific circumstances where the crime can be classified as first degree, including premeditated killings, killings committed during the commission of a felony, and killings of certain individuals like judges or in furtherance of an act of terrorism. Oh, here's the one that was Google. Let me look at the actual code. So it says, with intent to cause death of another person, he causes death of such person or of a third person. Either the intended victim was a police officer who was at the time of the killing engaged in the course of performing his official duties, and the defendant knew or reasonably should have known that the intended victim was a police officer. The intended victim was a peace officer as defined, who was at the time of the killing engaged in the course of performing his official duties, and the defendant knew or reasonably should have known that the intended victim was such a uniformed court officer, parole officer, probation officer, or employee of the Division for Youth. It also includes firefighters, EMS, ambulance drivers, paramedics, physicians, registered nurse, involved in a first response team, or any other individual who in the course of official duties performs emergency response activities and was engaged in such activities at the time of killing. And the defendant knew or reasonably should have known that the intended victim was such. And also covers the intended victim was an employee of a state correctional institution or was an employee of a local correctional facility who at the time of the killing was engaged in their official duties. And also, at the time of the commission of the killing, the defendant was confined in a state correctional institution or was otherwise in custody upon a sentence for the term of his natural life, et cetera, et cetera. So that is why in this case, it cannot be first degree, because he was an inmate. He was not a public servant, so to speak. Scottish, no. Correctional facilities are where you go, or after. So normally you are held in county jail, and then once you are found guilty and sentenced, you are transferred to a state facility. So be real, the warden at Marcy was actually an interim, as far as I know, and they were dismissed. I'm not sure who the warden is at Mid-State, but clearly there's not a lot of oversight going on here. All right, so the man, 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi, died March 1st after he was beaten at the Mid-State Correctional Facility in Marcy, New York, near Utica. Mr. Nantwi, other inmates said, was bloodied, swollen, and unrecognizable after the beating. An 11-count grand jury indictment was unsealed on Wednesday, charging 2 officers, Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair, with Mr. Nantwi's murder. They and 3 other officers were charged with manslaughter in the first degree and gang assault, and 2 more were charged with second-degree manslaughter. 8 of the officers were charged with trying to cover up the attack. The charges were announced by William J. Fitzpatrick, the Onondaga County District Attorney, who was appointed special prosecutor in the case. The officers who pleaded not guilty are due back in court on May 23rd. And there is a photo of Messiah. As a result of the numerous beatings by defendants and their fellow correctional officers, incarcerated individual Messiah Nantwi died due to massive head trauma and numerous other injuries to his body. The officers demonstrated depraved indifference to his life, according to the indictment. Governor Kathy Hochul, in a statement on Wednesday, said that all officers involved would be fired. Mr. Nantwi's death is a tragedy, and we extend our deepest condolences to his family and loved ones. Let me be clear. Our state correctional facilities must be safe for correction officers, civilian staff, the incarcerated population, and surrounding communities. Daniel Marticello III, Commissioner of the State Department of Corrections, offered his condolences to Mr. Nantwi's family. His murder was a senseless act that no family should ever have to endure. Mr. Nantwi's death came amid a deepening crisis in the state prison system. Thousands of corrections officers in most of New York's 42 prisons had left their assigned posts in protest of what they said were hazardous working conditions, taking part in a series of wildcat strikes that lasted 3 weeks. And in my opinion, those strikes were a deflection from the fact that their peers had just been charged with murder, manslaughter, etc. in the death of Robert Brooks. Because my question was, why now? Why not before? Why didn't you protest before? But that's just my opinion. It is the second time in 2 months that state corrections officers have been criminally charged in the death of an inmate. The other inmate, Robert Brooks, 43, was fatally beaten by guards in December at the Marcy Correctional Facility directly across the road from where Mr. Nantwi was beaten. 10 officers were criminally charged in Mr. Brooks' death, 6 of them with murder, after they were captured on body-worn cameras beating and choking him in the prison's infirmary. And in that case, they did not realize that their body cam had a standby mode where it recorded video, but not audio. So my opinion is that the officers at Midstate took a lesson from their peers at Marcy. Some prisoners' rights groups had accused the striking officers of attempting to distract attention from the beating death of Mr. Brooks and the prison system's deep-seated culture of brutality. Well, there we go. They weren't the only ones. I don't think any rational prosecutor could stand in front of you for the second time in 6 weeks talking about cases that have remarkable similarities and say everything is fine. It is a problem, and there is a problem. In a statement Wednesday night, the State Correction Officers Union called the indictment and the details of Mr. Nantwi's death extremely troubling and said the overwhelming majority of our members conduct themselves with professionalism and are committed to providing the safest environment in our correctional facilities. I don't disagree with that. You have a group of goons who just take it upon themselves to be a-holes. And hey, Angie, how are you? Nanya, yes. Yes, the National Guard. So Robert Brooks died on December 9th of 2024. The charges in his death didn't come until the, I feel like it was like mid to end of February. Let me look it up real quick. Robert Brooks officers charged. Okay, so it was March, actually. They weren't charged until March. And as I was looking up that, apparently one of them, David Walters, who was charged with second-degree manslaughter in Brooks's death, was to plead guilty to the existing charge with a recommendation for a mid-range sentence. Interesting. I'll have to look up to see if there's any new information on Robert Brooks, the officers in Robert Brooks's death. Hey, AP, thanks for being here. Okay, so I actually read that. Mr. Nantwi, who had been serving a 5-year term for a second-degree criminal possession of a weapon, was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital early on March 1st. 9 prisoners interviewed by the New York Times, 7 of whom agreed to have their names used, said Mr. Nantwi had been viciously beaten by up to 15 corrections officers and their supervisors. And I did read this article at the beginning of my live. So if you came in a little late, definitely rewind after it ends and take a look at that, because it's quite interesting. Mr. Nantwi, Mr. Fitzpatrick said, died from traumatic brain injuries as a result of the violent blows to his head, as well as at least 69 other serious blows to his body. Like, just to think, nearly 100 violent attacks on him. In addition to officers Levi and Blair, officers Thomas Eck, Craig Klemek, and Daniel Berger were charged with first-degree manslaughter and gang assault. Sergeants David Ferrone and Francis Chandler were charged with second-degree manslaughter, and 3 others faced lesser charges. This indictment signals that violence and lawlessness in our prisons will not be tolerated, said Earl Ward, a lawyer for Mr. Nantwi's father, Patterson Nantwi Jr. The Reverend Kevin McCall, a Brooklyn-based civil rights activist and spokesman for the Nantwi family, was in the courtroom for the officers' arraignments on Wednesday. We heard from him in that last clip. Something has to be done, he said, noting that he had returned to Utica on behalf of Mr. Nantwi while still fighting for justice for Mr. Brooks. The indictments were only a first step. We want jail time because that's what real justice looks like. On the day of Mr. Nantwi's death, members of the National Guard, who had been deployed to replace striking officers at Mid-State, a medium security prison, and that's actually where I was going. Nunya had asked a question, and that's where I was going with my answer, and I never got there, is that the strikes were happening, and because the correctional officers were on strike, the National Guard was deployed by Governor Hochul to oversee the prisons. So the National Guard was preparing to conduct a security check in a housing area to make sure all prisoners were accounted for. The guardsmen had received little training on how to deal with and interact with prisoners. Shortly before 11 a.m., they requested assistance in handling, quote, an unknown issue with an incarcerated individual. Once the requested officers arrived, they were directed to a room where they encountered Mr. Nantwi. Mr. Nantwi had become emotional when the count was set to begin and had left for the shower area of the dorm where he could be heard crying. One prisoner, Rodney Richards, 43, said that Mr. Nantwi appeared to be having a disagreement with the guard members and had refused to go to his cubicle. Several prisoners said he had stopped taking his psychiatric medications. When officers arrived, they made little to no effort to understand the reason for the call. Mr. Nantwi had his hands raised, and when he protested being handcuffed and restrained, he grabbed the vest of Officer Joshua Bartlett. The assault began immediately. Officers Levi and Blair began beating Mr. Nantwi, striking him on his body and head with their boots for no legitimate law enforcement purpose. Officers Eck, Klemek, and Berger also participated in the beating, using their fists, batons, and boots. The attack worsened after Mr. Nantwi bit the hands of officers Blair and Eck. Sergeants Ferrone and Chandler, both supervisors, failed to intervene during the 5-minute assault. One prisoner whose cubicle was near Mr. Nantwi's recalled the sounds of the blows to his body. He was screaming. The prisoner Jordan McLean, 26, said at the time, I kept hearing, stop resisting, and at one point you can just hear something being hit. Mr. Nantwi had begged the prison guards to stop beating him, said another prisoner. He said, I didn't do anything. You're really hurting me. Stop. Some of the prisoners said the guards did not appear to be wearing body-worn cameras. Others said a few of the officers were wearing them, but they were turned off. 4 of the prisoners interviewed said they saw a corrections sergeant with either a handheld or body-worn camera, but that he was facing away from the attack. After the beating, the prisoner said Mr. Nantwi was dragged down the hall and down a flight of stairs, shackled and handcuffed, his face bloodied and swollen. One prisoner, Mr. Richards, said Mr. Nantwi was not recognizable. And this was all said prior to the investigation. So the first New York Times article was from March 2nd. Mr. Nantwi died on March 1st. So the prisoners' accounts were legitimate. Everything that the other inmates said, the DA confirmed. And this actually, I think this is, yeah, this goes into the article we read earlier, so I'm not going to read that part. Almost immediately after Mr. Nantwi was taken to a nearby hospital, Sergeants Chandler and Ferrone ordered those involved in the assault to meet. The sergeants and Officer Levy pleaded with the other officers to omit them from the department's use of force reports. Sergeant Michael Iffert reported in official records that he did not witness force being used, even though he was standing directly outside Mr. Nantwi's room. Sergeant Iffert was charged with offering a false instrument for filing. Sergeant Chandler ordered another officer to retrieve a weapon that had been confiscated earlier in the day during an episode unrelated to Mr. Nantwi, and asked aloud which officer would volunteer to falsely claim that he had discovered it on the floor. Officer Eck agreed to do so. Unreal. Sergeant Ferrone, who was caught discussing the weapon on a body-worn camera placed in the infirmary's restroom, and uttered an expletive after spotting it. The next day, at the direction of Sergeant Chandler, the guards met for breakfast at Raspberries to develop a story that, quote, nothing improper had been done to Mr. Nantwi. The story they agreed to tell, according to the indictment, was that Mr. Nantwi had been armed with a weapon and then it had been recovered from his room. There we go. And regardless of whether a weapon was found or not, enduring nearly 100 blows to the head and body is not justified at all. And I hope that, those who did, who ultimately caused the death of Messiah, face the full sentence. Oh, thank you, Scottish Bluebell. That's sweet. Kitty treats. I appreciate that. I was going to look something up. Oh, I wanted to look up quick the sentence for New York State sentence. I believe that in New York, the second-degree murder and depraved indifference can be life in prison. But let me see. In New York, murder in the second degree carries a minimum sentence of 15 years to life imprisonment and a maximum sentence of 25 years to life. This means that if someone is given the minimum sentence, they will be eligible for parole after 15 years, but if released, they will be on parole for life. The maximum sentence means they are not eligible for parole until serving 25 years in prison. Interesting. And New York State does not have the death penalty, which is an unfortunate in some cases. So let me just get back to comments quick to see. Natalie says, how do these people sleep at night? God, I feel bad for these men's wives and kids, what they must go through behind. Well, I mean, it could be that they're just a-holes at work. But, usually if you're an a-hole at work, you're probably an a-hole at home in general. I know, seclusion. I don't even want to think about it. Just like Robert Brooks. Yep. They had breakfast to plan an excuse. Might as well as had commemorative tattoos. Yeah. It's disgusting. I hope so too, Nanya. I hope the jury throws the book at them for sure. These employees didn't even think of their own families and what they would go through at all, let alone life. And a lot of the correctional officers who went on strike, the governor had ordered them back to work. And if they didn't go back to work, they would lose their insurance, like their benefits. And a lot of them chose not to go back. And I just think hopefully they had some other way, because insurance is not cheap. And years ago, I had to go on COBRA because the job that I had didn't offer insurance, and it's a lot of money. So, but I thought the same thing, but I mean, they had a point to prove, and they stood on the fact that they weren't going to go back until things changed. And I still think they did it as a deflection. And that's really sad, because maybe Robert Brooks wouldn't have died. Messiah wouldn't have died if things changed before. But this obviously has been going on for a very long time. It's just now that they're getting caught, because the medical examiner is also very helpful in these situations, because if you've got nearly 100 blows on your body, clearly it was excessive force and it was not justified, regardless of what was going on. I know, 22. And Robert Brooks' family did file a civil lawsuit. I'll have to check on that to see if anything's going on with that. And I'll have to look up what's happening with the officers in his case as well, because I haven't looked at that in a while. But these officers are due back in court on May 23rd, which is about 4 weeks. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, about 4 weeks. Oh, that's the almost Memorial Day. That's the Friday before Memorial Day, May 23rd. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for being here, especially on short notice. I hadn't planned on going live at all today, and I saw that these officers were charged, so I wanted to do a live on this because, one, it's relatively local to me, and two, it needs to stop happening. It needs to. Yeah, Scottish makes you wonder how many prisoners are getting treated like this. For sure, for sure. So everyone have a great day. I'm going to go outside, even though I think it's still a little bit chilly out, but I got to get my stuff done. Got to get it done because it's already Thursday. I go back to work Monday. So busy. So if I don't see you on these YouTube streets, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And until next time, I will see you on the flip side.
You have one shot on stage, what you got to play? Generic drops for days, still the people rage. Am I not insane? Can you stop and explain why these drops are so lame? Is money buying you fame? I'm fucking on, I'm killing it with this song. You haters can sing along or go back where you belong. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with giving up, moving on. Cause I took your girl to prom, she can't help but sing this song. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out and my high parass. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out and my high parass. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. So on like a light switch, flirting back. There's nothing wrong with the way that she's working that. I just want that body bad, come on baby, bring it back. I'm so gone, faded off a 30 rack. She's so on like a light switch, flirting back. There's nothing wrong with the way that she's working that. I just want that body bad, come on baby, bring it back. I rap with a passion, yeah, I got it in me. I've been waiting quite a long time for y'all to hear me. It's about damn time you put some stock into me. You're either sponsoring me or fucking bothering me. And the fact is, we just practice on this madness. That is why your status is like a canvas. Chances our advancement is enhancing, and this new expansion's like a mansion. Comes off till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out and my high parass. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out and my high parass. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse.